This conference will now be recorded.
No. It's not CE. Nope. Okay.
Hopefully that wasn't the reason why you're here. And I joke a lot, so don't take it personal, anything I say. First, thanks for letting me come. I love doing this. I love sharing my experiences. And as Frank said, residential and commercial are quite a bit different. When I first graduated from college back in 85 or 84, I knew I wanted to get into real estate, but I didn't know how to get into real estate. Didn't have any clue, no experience whatsoever, but I could sell. I was always number one or two selling fish fry tickets as a little kid, for Little League Baseball. And come to find out, my father always bought from the guy that won because he didn't want me to have the mini bike that was up for prizes. So that didn't quite suit me very well, but I did my best. I've been to a lot of these seminars in sales, about real estate, about just sales in general. And I've always found that if the person that's putting everything together writes everything out and gives it to everyone, at the end of the day, I always found myself looking at it, putting it in the round file or filing it away and never ever reading it again. So what I try to do when I give a speech is ask people, if you hear something that you like, write it down, because that's going to be the best way. That means it's important to you as you're hearing it. And that way it's something that you'll probably go back and look at again. So a little bit about myself. I've been doing this about 37 years. I got out of A&M, went to work for a metered mail sales company, lasted there right at a year, and found out that my boss was going to have his best year ever. He's going to make $35,000 a year. And I said to myself, that's what I want to make a month. And so then I started transitioning into real estate. I just happened to fall into a girl here in the Woodlands, didn't want to make an appointment to go see a developer in town. So I asked if I could go do it, and it was for a canvassing position. The only thing I did all day, every day was canvass buildings, trying to find clients for that particular company. Hard way to start, but it's kind of the way that you do it in commercial real estate. People always ask me, what's the difference between commercial and residential? And for me, it's always been the freedom of the weekends. I love my weekend. I love to hunt. I love to fish. I love to do everything I do out on the place. And so for me to work on the weekends cut into my time, what I consider my time. So that's why I got into commercial. I don't know if this is necessarily the appropriate place to put it, but people always say, I want to get into commercial real estate because of the money. And the money can be good if you're willing to work. My largest transaction in regards to commissions was $821,000. That was my commission. And so that was after splits with the company and everything else. It's out there, you can make it. It's just a matter of how hard you want to work for it. And so for me, when I first got into business, I was literally given a desk about half the size of one of these, a phone and a phone book, and said, go. And from there, I had to figure it out. That is the absolute wrong way to do things. If you want to have a successful career with people around you and help them become successful, mentor them. Help them with their questions. Help them not make the same mistakes that you made. Help them understand what the obstacles and objections they're going to receive and help them get around those. There's always a way to get around an objection. Objection is just another chance to say yes. That's the way I look at it. I go on a theory I really can't tell you about. I go on the F-no theory. Until they tell me that, I'm going to call them back. And so I know that's kind of the wrong way to put it, but that's kind of the way that I work. I keep pushing until I get the deal that I want to get. Some of my largest transactions have been from cold call. A lot of people say, I don't want a cold call. And that's fine if you don't have to. There's a guy that I used to work with that's father grew up in Houston. Father's a well-renowned doctor, and all of his business is referral. I think that would be fantastic. That wasn't the way I got into business. I didn't know, honestly, that Richmond and Westheimer ran parallel. I knew nothing about Houston. And so for me, it was all a learning experience. And it's just, it makes it a lot harder in that way. But then again, what you learn is what you learn. At one point in time, my wife could say, we'd be at a party or something, and someone would say, I work with XYZ company in this part of town. And I could tell them who their boss was, when their lease was coming up for expiration, and how many square feet they had. Then you just have to know your marketplace. And that's one thing that to try to get into is, if in fact you want to get into commercial, one of the hardest things to do is really look internally at yourself. What kind of person are you? Do you play a lot of golf? Do you like bowling? Who do you hang around with? Because more than likely, that's the avenue that you should pursue in commercial real estate. Not everyone is cut out to be what I do, which is a tenant rep broker. I represent companies in office lease negotiations. I represent some building owners in lease negotiations. So I understand both sides of the coin, but to me, that is where I feel most comfortable. I've got other people that I've worked with that are industrial guys. They're the guys that come in the boots and blue jeans. They go after all the industrial sites around town. That's their mainstay. Then you have people that sell multifamily, you have land sales, you have people that, buy and sell churches. That's their specialty. You have people that works primarily with doctors. God bless them. I have a hard time with that particular group, but that's just me. I've started to increase my level of attempts to get with doctors, because they're the only people that know more than I do. And that's fine. If that's where they are, that's where they are. You just work around their weaknesses to help them get the best deal possible. But let's see. Some of the companies, one of the things when you're listening to someone speak, I always thought, well, who is this person and what has he done? Why should I be paying attention to this person? To list some of the companies that I've worked with in the past, I've worked with Aeromexico, Continental Airlines, Exxon. I was actually the building agent for one of the Exxon buildings. And so I got to work not only with Exxon themselves, but with all of their brokers that they had, their attorneys or everything else. So you learn so much when you represent a building on how other brokers work. I don't know if y'all know a company called Clarion Corporation. They're here in the Woodlands. They are a multi-billion-dollar company based out of Switzerland. They do everything from pigments and paint to race cars. And so just the entire spectrum: land, mining, oil and gas, everything. BASF, DuPont Drilling Fluids, they're here in the Woodlands. Shreve Chemicals here in the Woodlands. Oppenheimer's here in the Woodlands. Cheniere Energy is another one. I don't know if you know. You always see their sign on the back of the Astrodome, a Minute Maid. Their CFO was a friend of mine, and I represented them for years until they got a new president, and the new president wanted a national broker, and that's not me. I don't work for a national firm because I don't do politics very well. If you tell me you're going to do something, that's kind of what I expect to see, and if you don't, then it's disappointing. So I like the smaller groups, and that's what I've always focused on. Today, what I would like for everyone to do is, when you leave here, I want you to, as mentioned earlier, look internally as to who, what, and where. Commercial has many aspects. That's what I said a moment ago. What's best for you? I mean, if I were to say, okay, you're going to go industrial, you're going to go into residential, you're going to go into land sales, that might be the totally wrong thing for me to do, because I don't know your personalities. But I can certainly help you when you decide what you want to do. Do you want to do tenant rep? Do you want to do building rep? Do you want to do land sales? I can help you through all those processes. We have the forms, we have the objections, we have everything on computer, so that if you say, I'm having trouble with this particular objection, I can go to the computer, look up the list of objections, and tell you how we've gotten past that numerous times. And that will be very invaluable. That'll help out a whole lot. Let's see. When I first got into real estate, I set up a set of goals that I wanted to do for myself. One was I wanted to make more money than my father did by the time I was 30. My father was an attorney. I did it at 28. Unlimited earning potential. What I always found depressing about going to work for someone was that you had a salary, and no matter how hard you worked, that was what you were limited to. And that just went against everything that I was about. I like to work hard. I like to work smart, and I like to earn more money because I do. And real estate gave me that opportunity. It really, the only limiting factor was me. So if I wanted to work on a weekend, if I wanted to work after hours, I certainly did. I enjoy working with the people that I enjoy working with, and I don't work with people that I don't want to work with. As an example, as you can well imagine, after 37 years, I've got a million stories. Early in my career, I was canvassing a building on Briar Park, 2925 Briar Park, probably 1990. And I walked into this reception area, and there was a little old lady behind the desk, and a receptionist was coming in to spell her. It was at lunchtime. And I walked in and I gave her my card. I started my little speech, and she said, "I don't see how people like you can just walk in here and bother people." And I went, huh. I said, okay. I said, I understand your point. And I said, but the beauty of my job is I can work with whomever I want. You have a good day. Then I turned around and walked away. I have a tendency of doing that, quite frankly, and it makes it interesting. You never know what you're going to get back. But I have to do something for myself to make sure that I realize that what I am doing is good, that what I'm doing is going to help people. And it does. I mean, I represented this one law firm down in the Galleria that at the end of the day, when we finished negotiations, that group was going to save $702,000 over the next 10 years. That was money that those partners could then take home. Instead of paying the landlord, they took it home. And I represented them for over 30 years. Now the firm's all split and it's all gone. But still, it makes you feel good to know that what you've done, you've achieved a savings for them. They never forget you. I mean, I could call up one of the managing partners that used to be the managing partner, and he'll take my call today. That to me is worth its weight in gold. As I mentioned earlier, I set my own hours. I rarely work on a weekend. I worked on one transaction for 7 days a week for a full year before I closed it. It was a very large transaction. And what I like about my job is no one is micromanaging me. I don't like someone sitting there right behind me. You need to do this, you need to do that. Real estate gives you the ability to push as hard as you want or to back away. Whatever your situation is, you spend the time that you want to spend on it. If you want to be successful, there are things that you need to do. If you want to earn a middle income, which is no problem there whatsoever, don't work quite as hard. It's literally that simple. As I mentioned earlier, I think that the ability for people to really get something out of a meeting like this is to take notes. So please, if you want to take notes, take notes. If you want to ask me questions afterwards, please feel free to do so. One of the most important things at a time like this is to determine which avenue you want to go after. Do you want the tenant rep? Do you want the building rep? Do you want the land sale? Figure it out for yourself so that you can then come to me and say, this is the path that I want to take. Can you help me get there? What do I need to do first? What in each portion of those options is different totally. I mean, if you're representing a building, that's one thing. If you're representing tenants, it's another. If you're selling land, that's another. If you are working with professionals, doctors, that's another. So it's just a matter of understanding what's best for you. I mean, a buddy of mine, my in-laws are big bowlers. They would be an industrial broker. My father was a big golfer. He would have been a tenant rep broker. It's just how and what best suits your particular personality. Let's see. People ask me why commercial real estate, and are there certain factors that you see constant throughout all the real estate brokers that you deal with every day? And there are. I mean, to be in a success in commercial real estate, there are like 7 things that I've written down here that I think you have to have. One is determination and a no quit attitude. At one point in time, this is no joke, at 8 o'clock in the morning, I was on the phone and I was cold calling. And I cold called until 5:30 every day. And for 5 weeks, I did that. 5 complete weeks, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5:30. And I didn't pick up a new client. And I'm just sitting there thinking, God, it can't be this darn hard. The next week, I picked up 5 clients. Same routine, same everything. So you've got to have the determination to be able to get past the no's, because there will be thousands of no's. You've got to be thick-skinned, so you just kind of let anything that someone says roll off your back and understand that they don't know you. They don't know the type of person that you are. They don't know what you're going through at that particular point in time. So you've got to just kind of just let it go. For me, that was hard to get used to. I wasn't used to having the rejection. I wasn't used to people saying no and don't call back, or no and whatever. So it took me a while to be able to get past that and to stop the smart aleck answers like the lady that I gave her when I was in the reception room. So I'm much better about it now, starting to get that down, but it's just a matter of the confidence and the experience, you know, and the type of person you are. I've always been quick with responses, and that's what's always got me in trouble. So try not to do it anymore. You have to believe in yourself. You have to know that you're a good person. You know that whatever it is that you're doing, you're helping someone else. And for me, that's very, very important. If I know that I am trying to help a company take more money home, if I know that the location that I find someone is perfect for them, I do that. I had a client one time ready to sign a lease. I mean, this lease was literally negotiated to the last degree. And across, at that time, the fax machine came a flyer of a building that was better for them. A totally different building. And I'm sitting there looking at that flyer, and I know down deep what I need to do. I need to call my client and say, hey, there's an option out there for you that's better. And I did. And she goes, are you crazy? Why did you call? We're ready to sign a lease. And I said, give me an hour. I'll be down there. I'll pick you up. We'll go take a look at this building and you'll see. Sure enough, we went and looked at the building. The economics weren't that much different, but the layout of the building and everything were so much better for this client. But I had to start totally over again because we hadn't done anything in that building. And I had to call the other agent back and say, I appreciate everything you did, but we're not going to go there. That's hard. And that's when stuff can happen between agents. But it was the right thing to do. It was the right place for them. It was the right layout. Was it best for me? No. I could have signed that lease and gotten paid and run down the road and nothing would have been worse off but me, because I would have known that I didn't do my best job. And so to me, that's super important. You have to continue your sales training. That's what so many people don't do. They feel, hey, I've got this down. I know all there is about sales. But my deal, whenever I went to a sales training program, was if I could find one pearl of knowledge, one pearl out there, something that someone said that I could then turn into money, then it was well worth my time. And I found that if you didn't find one in every sales transaction or in every sales meeting, you're probably not listening very good. So make sure that you pay attention, make sure that you take those notes, and make sure that you look for opportunities. Heck, when I'm in an elevator going up a building, I'm listening. What's someone going to say? I mean, I have found more transactions riding up and down elevators because people gripe once they get out of the office. You know, oh, it's hot in my office. It's you know, property management's not worth the plug nickel. All of the complaints, ding, 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 ding. You get off on their floor, you watch where they walk, and you know who to call. I mean, it's as simple as that. I was at a golf tournament one time, charity golf tournament. This guy goes, I didn't know him. He goes, his buddy's on our team. He said, what do you do? And I told him, he goes, well, there are a couple of companies that you need to call in the Woodlands. I said, no kidding. So he gave me both of the company names. So that was a Friday. Monday morning, 8 o'clock, I'm on the phone. Call the first company. This guy goes, I don't know who you are, but your network is incredible because there's only 2 people that know about this. And I said, actually, there are 4. The 2 people you thought of, me and the guy that told me. And I got the deal, and now we built 2 buildings for him up here in the Woodlands. A very large transaction. But it's because people open up their mouths and they tell you things, if you'll just listen, you'll find deals. They're out there. You have to be organized. My first number of years, quite frankly, I knew I didn't know anything about commercial real estate, so I picked an area of town that not many brokers at that time worked. That was Greens Point, and that was 1960. It was considered too far at that time for anyone with any kind of experience to go try to find clients. It was right for me because I was as green as the grass outside. I didn't know anything. So I went up there and I started canvassing. And I started on one end of the belt, and I walked through every building on the belt, every building on 1960, and spoke with everyone. I literally wore out 3 pairs of shoes. And in that year, my first year, I made the total commissions were $50,000. Not a lot of money, but back then in 1986, that was quite a bit of money. But it was a very hard way to do it. And I didn't take the notes that I should have. So then I started with a 5x8 card, index card. Everyone that I spoke with on the phone or everyone that I contacted in person, I would come back, write down the name of the company, when their lease came up for expiration, how many square feet they had, and any notes. And when I went to a computer, which was in about 1990, I had 3 boxes about that long with 5x8 cards full. And so you're entering all that stuff, and then it allows you to keep organized. Please be organized. Whatever you do, make sure that you're taking the notes, whatever way that you need to. And everyone takes notes differently and does things differently as far as being able to remember when to call those people back, when their lease is coming up for expiration, when their birthday is, whatever the situation is, reach out. Because if you're not doing it, someone else is. I can promise you that. Use the internet now to market. I am horrible at using the internet to market. I mean, I can turn it on, I can turn it off. I can mess it up. I can get on Facebook. I can also look at all the buildings and things in Houston because we have what's called CoStar. I don't know, do y'all know what CoStar is? Okay. In the commercial world, it's kind of our commercial MLS. It's just every building out there, contacts, everything about the building. Is the information necessarily correct? No, it's not. So when, like right now, we're looking for a requirement for 70,000 foot, basically box user, a company that's bringing in furniture from Baltimore, and you'll pull up a survey, you'll say, I need X number of square feet in this area, it pulls up all the buildings, then you've got to take the time to call every one of them to make sure that whatever you send your client is correct. But it's invaluable to us because we don't have to do that. Before CoStar was here, I had literally pictures of over 900 buildings in Houston that I had gone around taking pictures of. And I sold all that information to a predecessor of CoStar years ago. So you never know where the business is going to come from, what you're going to be able to do with it, but you have to be able to meet or exceed all of your competition's material that they send out. The more that you know and can do on the internet, the better off you are. I was hoping that at the end of this, y'all will have as many questions as you'll have answers, quite frankly. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Great question. I would literally just walk in with this is going to sound corny, okay, but it worked for me. I would walk in and I'd hand the lady a card, and most of the time you're dealing with a woman receptionist, and I would always say, "Golly, you smell good. What perfume do you wear?" And I'd take out a piece of paper and I'd write it down. So that smells good. I'm going to buy that for my wife. Now, who do I speak with? And I'd roll right into about your office lease. Who's the person who signs it? Because they always say, "Oh, it's our office manager." Okay, I'm sure it is. The office manager is part of that transaction, but the office manager is not the person who signs the lease. Who signs the lease? That's what I want to know. Does that person have an assistant? And I literally write all this down. And then if I can get back to see them, great. If I can't, no problem. I'll just send them some information. And then if the receptionist was real handy and, helped me out, I go back every day, and I still do this. I have little thank you cards, and I write, "Thank you for being so nice. It was a pleasure." And I put a card in and I send it. And it's, with a stamp, it's not a stamped kind of deal. And I can't tell you how many times I've had people say we don't see that anymore. What can you do to differentiate yourself? Because there's a ton of brokers out there. But your timing, quite frankly, is very, very good right now, because most people went broke during COVID. And a lot of commercial agents that were new in the business are out now. And so it might be a very good time to look into it as much as you want to look into it. But that's how I did it. I was finding another way. I got tired of you'll see the same objections time and time again. And so I came up with what was called the survey method. And the survey method was a series of questions. There were 7 questions, and it was all designed to give me information without basically letting them know that that's what they were giving. And it was like when you're in an office building and it's springtime and it's cold in the morning and hot in the afternoon, everyone's been in a building like that. Usually by 1 or 2 o'clock, the building starts to get a little bit warm. They crank the air conditioner up, and then they're good. So my question to them was, in the morning, in the springtime, how well does your landlord control the temperature in your building? Does it get real hot right after lunch? And everyone's experienced that. Yes, it does. Oh my goodness. And then they go into a tirade. And so that gives you information. And then the other questions will lead you to answers. How long have you guys been here? And they don't think he's trying to find out when my lease is coming up, but that's what you're doing. And how many people do you have in your company? Why do you ask that? And you always have to have a response. Why do you want to know how many people we have? Because if you're a large company, a lot of times you're treated a certain way in negotiations, but if you're a small company, you're treated differently. How were you treated in negotiations? And it just opens up Pandora's box for everything that good and bad went on in that negotiation. So everything there lends itself to give you an answer that you need to be able to get the overall picture of that company. Their lease is coming up. A lot of times they'll say, "Oh, we've been here about 3 years." In most instances, they have 2 years remaining on an office lease, because most leases are 5 years. So then if they get hot all the time, hey, then you can take that same information and call anyone else in that building and say, "Hey, are you guys hot right after lunch?" "Yeah." "Okay, that's an in." That just broke the ice, that got you in the door. And so if you use it like that, then there's a lot of ways. I had one guy one time downtown say, "This is a cold call." And that shocked me. I mean, I wasn't expecting that. And I just stopped talking and I said, "That's a great idea." I said, I could really use that. I said, "But how does your landlord treat you in negotiation?" And he went right back into it and answered all my questions, and I ultimately represented him. So use what you can while you're there, get as much information. And then what so many people don't do is they learn when the lease is coming up and they don't continue to drip it. You have to drip with information. You have to drip with market information, whether it's about their building, about their area, about things that are going on. Because if you're not, someone else is. And someone else is always in front of them, therefore they're always interested in finding out what's going on, even if they don't intend to use it. I mean, when someone tells me, "Oh, I have a broker," I always say, "Fantastic. That's great. What do you like about your broker?" Get them to talk about what they like, what they don't like. And a lot of times you'll be able to open up that door to be able to get in there and make a presentation. One thing that I didn't listen, unfortunately, to my father as much as I should have. Being a hard-headed kid, right. He told me something that I found very interesting and very useful, and that was, you'll have good times and you'll have bad times in every industry in sales. If in the good times you save your money, you will have money in the bad times to spend. If you live up to the top of your expectations, your money, you'll run out. COVID was here. We didn't apply for any money from the government, and we were fine because we had been able to save. And that to me is very, very important. I don't like to owe anything. I like to pay cash. I like it to be that. And this industry has given us the ability to do that. We've traveled all over the place. I love to travel. We just got back from the Bahamas. Right before that, we went to Aruba. But it was because of the effort that we put in the beginning. If you put in the effort in the beginning, you build your base, you build your clientele, you'll make it just fine. And what's so important in starting out in this industry is not only looking internally to yourself and what kind of people that you want to deal with, but look at your circle of friends, your circle of influence. Everyone has a circle of influence. You have an insurance agent, you have a title company, you have a CPA, you have all these people that are potential clients. And when you're especially new in the industry, reach out to them, let them know what you're doing, let them know how you can help them, and ask for their business. The worst question out there is the one that's not asked. And if you can ask your friends, I have a broker, I've been working with that broker 30 years. And that's what one of the guys in our Sunday school class did. And I never brought it up again. And I didn't bring it up then. He actually brought it up to me because he wanted to tell me that he had a broker. Fine, no big deal. I'm not going to push on something like that. But if it's a regular person out there that I want that business, I'm going to keep sending them information until they tell me, heck no. And then, then I stop. But for me, I didn't really have a choice when I first got into commercial real estate. We found out 3 weeks after I got into real estate that my wife was pregnant. 1985. You don't have a choice at that point. You better go and you better make it happen. And that's what we did. But first and foremost, before you can really get into the training aspects of it, how do you overcome this objection? How do you overcome that objection? What are you looking for in regards to a deal for your client? You need to understand what type of real estate you want to go into, what your pain level is in regards to how hard you're willing to work, your time, your hours, things like that. How much money do you want to make? Then you can work. I've got a formula that literally I can take a transaction, it's let's say 10,000 square feet, and I want to make, I know the commission is going to be X. I don't want to spend more than X number, or I want to find out how many hours I can work on that transaction before it becomes a draw against me. And you'll find transactions where usually the small ones, they take more time than the big ones because it's personal to that person. Very, very, that's their livelihood. Unlike the head guy of GE or something that, it doesn't make him any difference. But at mom and pop kettle that have 2,000 square feet in an office building, that's very, very important to them. So inevitably you'll spend more time there than you will with the bigger deals. But you have to understand that there's a time and a place to be able to pick up a deal and run with it and close it. And there's a time to say, enough's enough and I'm not going to finish it. And so if you want to learn about that formula, yes, sir.
John, I think might benefit from you telling that story about how you got into that client. You discovered a little bit about his preferences. And this would apply to residential as well.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
John, can you repeat the questions online so people can hear them? He's just asking the questions Frank asked.
Oh, okay. Frank just asked if I could repeat a question in regards to a story that I told him about picking up a particular client. And I had been trying to pick up this client for about a year. Never could get back to see this guy, never could. And I just come out of the Dale Carnegie training session. And so I found out through what's called pre-call planning that he had a secretary that I could call. So I called her. I'm looking for some help. What can you tell me about this guy? He loves to fish. He's just an avid fisherman. Fresh or saltwater? Saltwater. Okay. So I went down to Unlimited Tackle and asked the guy, what are the fish biting on right now in Galveston Bay? And the guy gave me several names of lures. I went and bought those lures. And I walked into his office, walked past his receptionist, walked into his office just out of the blue. No appointment, no anything. And I dropped those lures on his desk and I said, wouldn't you like to have more time to use these? And he just smiled. He's an older gentleman. And he pushed his chair back and said, sit down. And so I represented him in his lease negotiations. So you never know where you're going to find what. There was another one that this guy up in the Greens Point area loved beer. love beer. But he liked this one kind of German beer. And so I had never had it before. I didn't know if it was any good or not. So I went down to the store and it came in 4-packs. I bought a 4-pack of that, and I bought a 6-pack of generic beer. It comes in a white can, just says beer on it. And that's about as basic as you can get right there. And so on the 4-pack, I taped my cards. And on the 6-pack of generic beer, I had cards from a lot of my competition. I put those cards on the 6-pack of generic beer. And I walked in his office and I set him down and I said, now, if you had your choice, which would you drink? And he said, of course, the 4. I said, whose card's on that 4? And he goes, I can only imagine it's yours. Yes, it is. And I represented him in the lease negotiations. So there are all kinds of ways and things that you can do. Just get out of the box and think, what do you like? What don't you like? Figure out a way to understand what that person either does or might need and put it together. It's real easy. I mean, I, for years, had zero luck in representing engineers. I don't think like an engineer. A friend of mine is a real good engineer, so I've sat him down on numerous occasions. What are you looking for? What do you like? Tell me about you. And so he would, explain what he didn't like about salespeople and this, that, and the other. And so it was so simple. I put together a 3-ring binder, and it had every quarter until this guy's lease came up for expiration, labeled, January, May, whatever the months are. And I said, I'm going to be sending you information every quarter on your building and your market. This is a place that you can put it and keep it organized. All I said. Phone rings, it's him, come on down. And so that was marketing to a specific type of person, and it worked. And I've done numerous leases now for engineering firms because I better understand how they think. So if it's an attorney, it's one thing. If it's a doctor, it's another. If it's an engineer, it's another. If it's an insurance agent, they are the easiest, because the easiest people to sell are salespeople. And so, you go after what you feel comfortable about. There was one real big deal out in Park 10 that I did that was a cold call. And I called it, and this lady answered the phone, got an appointment with her boss the next day, went in to go meet with them. And I couldn't meet with him because unexpectedly the CEO of the company came in from Louisiana. But I represented the firm. And the reason why I did was because they had been working with another broker for quite some time. And they had a very simple first requirement. They had to get rid of 2,500 square feet of lab space in their office. They had a floor, 25,000 feet. And I had a 2,500 square foot lab, just so happened, only one I've ever had, in Park 10 that was going to be subleased. Put the two together in a week, they were done. And that's how the deal started. It went from that 2,500 sublease, expanded them, and then at the end of the day, they leased 121,000 feet. That equated to $800,000 and something thousand. So you never know where it's going to come from. I mean, that's just strictly a cold call that I knew nothing about the company and was able to pick it up. So it's out there. You just have to go after it. If you're not making that call, someone else is. And tenant rep is, I like it best because there's always people leasing office space. Even in today's marketplace, they might not lease as much. They might not take it for as long of a lease as they normally do, but there's always leasing some office space. There's someone always leasing space. So there's always a market out there. Multi-family homes, apartment complexes, you come and you go in regards to the activity level in any particular market. There are ups or downs, but in tenant rep, it's kind of a steady. It's as steady as you want it to be, because so many times what people will find themselves having is a great month and they don't do any kind of prospecting or anything, and then they go into the valley, and then they do a bunch, and then they come back up and they're doing good, and then they go down. I need Dramamine if in fact that's going on with me. I needed a lot more steady. And so after I closed that one deal out in Park 10, the next day my neighbor called me and goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he knew how much I just earned. And I said, "I'm cold calling." He goes, "You're kidding. I thought you'd be in the Caymans or something." And I said, "I'm unemployed. That deal's done. What are you doing next?" And so you'll make a very, very big check. And They, as a matter of fact, that was another one of my points in here is, what do you have in your life that is available one time and then it can change in an instant? That's your reputation. What do you do to keep your reputation? Everything honest. On that one deal, we were interviewing developers because we knew we had to build a building for this group. And one of the developers, we were around at lunchtime, and he reaches in his pocket inside of his coat and hands me an envelope. And I said, "What's in this envelope?" He said, $50,000. And I went, I said, "What's that for?" And he goes, "I want this job." So slid the $50,000 back to him. And this was a long time ago. 50,000 was a heck of a lot of money back then. It still is today, but back then it was more. And I said, if in fact this kind of money is still available at the end of this transaction, give it to my client. And I got up and I walked out. Okay, you can't take the chance that when the phone rings, it's someone you don't want to hear from. So always be honest. Always, no matter what, even when it's not in your best interest. You know, I've had many times where I could have had a client sign a lease that was where I would earn more than my best offer. I'd earn more if I closed it at that point in time. But there were more things to get from my clients. And so I negotiate to the bitter end, quite frankly, on leases. I mean, had one very recently up at, it closed not long ago, 20,000 foot deal on 249. And the people were very happy with this one building. We were well down the road in negotiations, and I found a better spot for them. And so again, I stopped what we did, went over there and put together the deal and the new lease. But that just meant, you know, months of work for me that I still had to do, that I could have closed and I could have walked away from. But that wasn't the best thing for my client. And at the end, the lady goes, "Why did you show us this building?" And I said, "Because I found it and I knew it was better for you. Therefore, I showed it to you." Then she said, "We were perfectly happy with 8,300 FM 1960. And I said, "Are you as happy today? Would you be as happy today in that building, or do you like your new building?" New building. And so do what's right for your client. Any questions? I mean, I could sit up here and literally tell you stories all day long that you know, that we've been through and we see on a regular basis. And most of them are kind of like that first one that I told you, because I have a tendency of just boom, hitting it and split. But it behooves you to kind of pull back a little bit. So that's what I do now after 37 years. Yes, sir.
Is there any training or certification that you advise, you know, or advantageous?
You have CCIM is probably the best. I'm not a CCIM person because I didn't want to take the time to go do it. I would think that if I had things to do over again, I would take CCIM. It gives you a lot better understanding of the entire economic process at the end of the day. Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to ask about last year. Did you feel like there was a major slump in commercial real estate?
Great question. Sure, sorry about that. The question was, last year in the middle of the COVID incident, what took place basically? Yeah, what were the effects of COVID? And it was horrible. I mean, yeah, we made money, but nothing in comparison to what we normally do. And it was enough to I was able to take the money that I earned and pay some of the guys that worked for me and keep them afloat. I didn't have to have it, but they did. And so that's what I did. But this year, what we're seeing is a lot of companies are looking at their entire operation and trying to see how much they can cut back on the office space that they're using. And that's an issue with landlords. But what I think is going to happen in the next 2 years or so, people are going to start coming back to the offices because they need the interaction. And not everyone can work from home. I can work anywhere. It doesn't make me any difference. But a lot of people really need to be able to bounce things off other people and to hear the hoopla of someone picking up a deal over here, whatever the situation is. And that will become the driving factor, bringing people back to the office, I think. But great question. I mean,
This is gonna have some questions for you, just gonna have them up there.
okay.
How do we get an appointment with you right now? Can you read it?
Yeah. Question was, how can you get an appointment with me and how soon? I am always available via email, certainly meetings, anything like that. What I ask anyone is to, when you come to a meeting, have the questions ready. Don't just come cold. And because, you know, what's the one thing you can only spend one time? That's time. Exactly. Be ready for it. Let's answer the questions. Let's get through it, and let's figure out a way to get through whatever it is that you're having a hard time with. Whether it's objections, I mean, I've got a list of objections. You hear every one of them all the time whenever you're cold calling. You know, I have a broker, not interested at this time. You know, we do it ourselves. There's just a ton of responses. And then